Hello, my name is John Bannon. I'm an attorney and philosopher. In today's video, I'm going to explain how superdeterminism destroys Bertrand Russell. This video is what they failed to teach you in college philosophy class about the philosophy of Bertrand Russell. When I speak about superdeterminism, I'm referring to a very specific and unique version of superdeterminism proven by Swedish theoretical physicist Dr. Johan Hansen in 2020. You can find his proof in the peer-reviewed physics journal Physics Essays, volume 33, number 2, June of 2020. Starts on page 216 and goes to page 218. It's entitled Bell's Theorem and Its Tests, Proof that Nature is Superdeterministic, Not Random. So this Hansonian superdeterminism says that we live in a predetermined static block universe without cause and effect in physics or physical causation or probabilistic causation. Hansonian superdeterminism is very different than the classic version of superdeterminism, first posited by Dr. John Bell in 1985. That classic superdeterminism involves hidden causal variables, whereas Hansonian superdeterminism denies the existence of hidden causal variables because it says causation is not real. So Hansonian superdeterminism says we live in 3 dimensions of space and one hidden static fourth dimension of time in a block universe. And all the particles in the block universe are fixed, like pebbles set in concrete. They don't move, they're permanent, and they change organization and patterns through the static dimension of time. So I've listed 5 points of Bertrand Russell's philosophy on the board, and I'm going to go through each point and explain to you how Hansonian superdeterminism disproves this point. So, point number 5, hell is vindictive and cruel. Under superdeterminism, however, um, there is a theory I call cinematism. And this theory of cinematism, which is similar to Molinism, says that God has metaphysical knowledge of our hypothetical freely willed decisions, and that God exhibits his knowledge in our predetermined universe. So even though our actions and decisions in the universe are without free will under Hansonian superdeterminism, nevertheless, one can reasonably infer that whatever our decisions or actions are in the universe, they're based on God's metaphysical knowledge of hypothetically what we would freely choose. So, because it would be unjust for God to send people to hell for eternity if they were simply puppets and they had no choice at all in committing the evil that they commit, then you can reasonably infer that God would use cinematism in predetermining the universe because God has free will and has to in order to atemporally create the universe, and therefore does know our hypothetical freely will decisions, and therefore it's an easy inference to say that he would exhibit that in our universe in order to righteously judge people to hell. Otherwise, we're just puppets, and you shouldn't send us to hell for something which we had no control over. So, hell, um, while it is an eternal place of punishment, nevertheless, the people God sends there deserve it. So, under superdeterminism, God has metaphysical knowledge of all our hypothetical freely willed decisions in all situations and circumstances. And God can use that knowledge to righteously judge the whole being in deciding whether to send that being to hell or not. So God does know whether that person deserves an eternity of punishment in hell. And because God is omnibenevolent and is under no duress, there's no reason God would lie about hell being a real place. And in fact, Christianity uses hell as the greatest threat to turn people from their sinful behavior. And because under superdeterminism, Christianity is a predetermined aspect of the block universe, and it is the predominant world religion, one can reasonably infer that God intended Christianity to be the objective morals for humanity. And that includes its teaching on hell as a real place. So one can reasonably infer the true existence of hell. And one can also, through uh, cinematism and through God's metaphysical knowledge of our hypothetical freely willed decisions, understand that God can, in fact, righteously condemn somebody to hell based on knowledge of their whole being. Essentially, the all the possibilities for them to freely choose something, God knows what the result would be, and therefore knows that person's character perfectly, and therefore can judge that character as deserving of eternal punishment in hell. Number four, the universe is meaningless. So Bertrand Russell thought that the universe was meaningless and that you have to create your own meaning in life. However, in our superdeterministic universe, every living thing has a block life. So, because the past, present, and future all are equally real, they're all permanent, they all exist presently in the block universe, then every moment of your life from birth to death still exists in the block universe. You just happen to be in the location of the dimension of time at the present moment. But your past and your future, they're there. You're just not presently in that location. So, um, because every moment of your life is contained within an information packet through the static dimension of time that I call your block life, then any meaning you have in life has to be contained within that block life. So the universal meaning of life is the predetermined role that your block life plays in the predetermined history of the universe and human history. So, meaning in life is baked into your very existence because you have a permanent block life and because your block life does play a part in the predetermined plan of the static block universe, then you cannot help but have meaning. Every living thing has meaning, and you can't get rid of the meaning because you can't get rid of it without cause and effect in physics. And you can't create your own meaning because you can't create meaning without cause and effect in physics. Um, Moreover, universal meaning in life cannot be potentials. So if you look at somebody's block life and you say, well, the meaning of life is X, but that potential doesn't actually happen in that person's block life. then it makes no sense to tell that person that the meaning of life for them is X when X does not appear in their block life. So potentials cannot be universal meanings of life. Not only that, possibilities don't even exist in the superdeterministic universe because nothing can be changed. So a potential is a possibility by definition, and it can't be a universal meaning of life because possibilities don't exist in the superdeterministic universe. So when Bertrand Russell says, well, the meaning of life is love and the acquisition of knowledge and pity, these are all potentials, which means they cannot be universal meanings in life. So Bertrand Russell is clearly wrong under superdeterminism. Number three, morals are a social construct. So Bertrand Russell thinks that it's society who creates morals, not God. But society cannot construct morals without cause and effect in physics. It's impossible to construct something or produce something um, or invent something if you don't have cause and effect in physics. It's an impossibility. So society does not construct morals. Rather, morals are inclusions in the static block universe, along with society. But nothing in the universe can actually cause or create anything that's in the universe. Not without cause and effect in physics. Uh, Number two, best possible life. So Bertrand Russell wrote that the best possible life is to cultivate objective interests to avoid the prison of self absorption, fostering union with the stream of life. However, under Hansonian superdeterminism, there is no such thing as possibilities in the block universe. There can't be without cause and effect in physics. Every event in the block universe is predetermined, whether it's in the past, present, or future. They're all equally real, and they cannot be changed without cause and effect in physics. So there is no such thing as possibility in our static block universe. Therefore, you cannot have a best possible life. That's an impossibility. Number one, no God. Bertrand Russell was an atheist, and he said, there's no such thing as God. And he said, if everything must have a cause, then God must have a cause. If there can be anything without a cause, then it may as well be the universe as God. So this seems like a pretty good logic. However, under Hansonian superdeterminism, cause and effect isn't real. So nothing's caused. So this whole line of argumentation falls apart because the universe doesn't have a cause, God doesn't have a cause, there are no causal chains because there's no causation. So this whole argument is completely invalidated. Now, you can talk about static complexity, such as the static complexity of the particle organization in our block universe. You can talk about the complexity of everything that God must know, because God must know the infinite logical possibilities for physical reality. in order to create any of those things. So, sure, there is complexity. There's just not causation. Now, if you want to say, well, if you're going to say something that's complex is uncaused, then why don't you just say it's the universe that's uncaused, as opposed to the complexity of God's mind? And the answer is this: there's scientific circumstantial evidence of the atemporal causation of our block universe. Now, that's not your typical cause and effect in physics. That is the appearance of the block universe from nothing outside of space time, meaning atemporal or non temporal creation. So if you could imagine the block universe, you can also imagine that there isn't a block universe. So there does appear to be an on off switch between the existence of the block universe and the non existence of the block universe. And because there's no moving time in the block universe, because there can't be without cause and effect in physics, because nothing can cause anything to move in time, then you can think of the concept of the atemporal creation of the block universe, which is different than cause and effect in physics. So, if there is scientific circumstantial evidence of atemporal causation of the block universe, then there is reason to posit the existence of a creator God, as opposed to just saying the block universe is uncaused. And the reason is because, well, if there's evidence of the atemporal causation or creation of the block universe, then you would need a God in order to create the block universe. Why? Because the creator of the block universe would have to know of and understand everything that appears in the block universe, including advanced technologies, in order to create that block universe, which means God would have to be supremely intelligent by definition. And God would also have to have free will because he would have to be able to freely choose among the infinite logical possibilities for block realities which one he's actually going to create. So there's good reason to believe in God and the block universe. And the answer is because of atemporal creation. Now, the scientific evidence we have of atemporal creation includes the scientific evidence of transcendent logic. So there was a recent experiment which showed that virtual particles had to be at play in particle collisions. But virtual particles are mathematical constructs, they don't actually exist. So these have to be transcendent logical entities. So why would you have a transcendent logic unless the universe was created? What's the point of transcendent logic then? Another good scientific argument for atemporal creation is the wave like nature of quantum mechanics. Uh, why waves? And the answer is because waves can have constructive and destructive interference. So if you imagine taking two pebbles 10 feet off the ground and dropping them simultaneously into a pond and watching the ripples of the two pebbles approach each other and interact, at some points the waves will construct, that is, they'll join together and go to twice the height. And at some points, they'll cancel each other out and you'll see just still water. So that's constructive and destructive interference. Well, that's exactly what you need if you're going to create a block universe from nothing or ex nihilo. You need something that is capable of destructive interference to nothing, to a point of nothingness, and in reverse to create something from nothing or these constructive waves. So the simple fact that quantum mechanics has a wave-like nature to it is a strong circumstantial case that the block universe was created atemporally from nothing. But of course, nothing doesn't have any power, so you need a God with power in order to create something from nothing. Something that didn't exist now exists. Okay, so you certainly didn't learn that in philosophy class about Bertrand Russell. So I hope you learned something. I'll give you a second to read the board. All right, until next time, take care.